Hi there. Just turn this down a little bit so it blends in. And this talk is I want to talk about a few different things. I want to talk about think about the ego, and as I do, I flow through the subjects. But I want to talk about the ego and in ascension and in spiritual awakening and what happens. And in the unexpected spiritual awakening, you're becoming, it's like you've got this awareness of your ego, where before you weren't aware, and you're becoming very, very present. Once you start going through that unexpected spiritual awakening, as I did, and anyone can go through it, it can be expected. It's just a case with me. I was so depressed that I was pushed into a corner. And when you're pushed into if you corner an animal, something might manifest, right? And for me, that's how then I started going through this unexpected spiritual awakening. At the time, I didn't even know it was called an awakening. Didn't know what the hell was happening. I knew it was a spiritual experience, but it's still going on today. But what I want to talk about is when you're going through this, you're becoming aware now of your ego. And you're aware of other people's ego also. And this is what happens is the fifth dimension is what you're entering in the spiritual awakening. And the fifth dimension is when you're aware of all the ego stuff and you realize that it's all an illusion. And there actually isn't any dimensions beyond the fifth dimension. And I'll tell you why. Because the fifth dimension and all dimensions are made up labels. When you enter the fifth dimension, or when you have that spiritual awakening, you're aware now that everything's just made up. And there's just infinite love. Like David Icke says, infinite love is the only truth, everything else is an illusion. So it's all just nothingness and awareness and love. But in this, you're realizing what the ego is. The ego is the illusion of self. And the illusion of self comes from all the outside information that has convinced us of what we think we are. And then that builds an ego attachment. But in this, you're becoming aware and you're becoming more observant with reality, and and this is what mindfulness is. Mindfulness is a state that comes from spiritual ascension, in like a spiritual awakening thing, where you're expanding your awareness because you're aware of the ego. And when you become self-awareness is what spiritual awakening is, and most people are not self-aware. When you're aware of the ego and other people's egos also, and when you become more present, you're able to observe the self and the ego and how it operates in other people also. And then this is giving you deeper insight and understanding into yourself. And this is what's happening when you're going through the spiritual awakening process. This is what's going on. You're becoming, and you're getting deeper understandings of how the ego works and the little tricks it plays. And you're realizing that it's all about not wanting an outcome. I talk about nirvana. And nirvana is a state of no right, no left in spiritual awakening process. And you can do it right now by understanding that left and right and ideas and all these different stuff is made up. And this is this is what heaven is. It's nirvana. And that's reached by when you become more aware, deeper understanding of your ego. You're realizing that it's all an illusion and that everything's made up and there's no way to go. And you're letting go of the idea of an outcome, right? And this expands your awareness further and further and further, and more, the more you're letting go. Because it's only the ego. The ego wants self-achievement. This is all over the planet. It can be famous people, it can be people that aren't famous, but it's all about achievement. It's all about something that a self wants to have. And this is what locks people into the illusion of self. because it is an illusion. And how it's an illusion is because if you weren't told everything from the external world, what you are, you would not have any sense of self as you have currently. And so this is what this is what's happened to me in this spiritual awakening process. This is what's been doing to me, letting me know that there is no sense of self if you're not told about the self. And as you're letting this go more and more and more, this is how you if you want to spiritually awaken, this is how you can spiritually awaken, by simply these philosophies I'm talking about. And there is no left or right, no right or wrong. It's just everything's made up. And actually, there's billions of people on this planet, so how can anyone know what's right and wrong? And so there's billions of perspectives, and everything's just a made-up idea. But as when you're thinking like this, you're expanding your awareness, because you're letting go of all inhibitions and ways and things, because you're not being any way. And this is the ego that holds it back. This is what people talk about when researchers that talk about MDMA, like they use this for post-traumatic stress now, and they say that when people are on this, the inhibitions and the self and the ego goes away, and this is what opens them up. It's the same thing as mindfulness. So it's the same, the only difference is the drug's simulating it. And you can do it yourself by simply these philosophies I'm talking about. These philosophies came to me in this unexpected spiritual awakening, and I learned later, that it's actually out there. Like, this stuff I talk about is in actually Buddhism also. And other people that have had spiritual awakenings, like on YouTube or something, they say the same things. So there's something to this. So we're, like when I was first going through this, for example, I didn't know what a spiritual awakening was. I didn't know. I thought I was going mad. But it turns out it's in science, heart-based living, and Buddhism, and so it's backed up knowledge. So with this, people are going to look and they're going to believe in people that are going through spiritual awakenings because of the fact it's in science as well. But back to the ego, this is what's melting away once you start to open up. Heart-based living, this is what the Heart Math Institute talks about. And once you start to live from your heart space, this is when, and be more present, you start to be aware of other people's egos. You start to be an observer instead of reacting to things. So you observe things instead of reacting to them. And as you're doing this more and more, you expand your awareness further. And this is how you develop real forgiveness. Real self-forgiveness and real forgiveness of others. Because what you're doing is, when you're opening yourself up more and more, you're understanding the reasons for people's actions. This is why people can't forgive. You can't forgive by turning the other cheek. You forgive by understanding of why this had to happen. And as you're doing this more and more, this is when you're open and your awareness more and more. And this is how the real energies awaken themselves. Energy, a lot of people talk about energy. Energy is to do with understanding and clarity, and this gives you insight into things, and this opens and expands your awareness, which is your life force. And then what you're tapping into is the love, the infinite love that is. Like David Icke once said, the infinite love is the only truth, everything else is illusion. And that's what's happening in spirit, in ascension. When you're understanding things, when you're going deeper in meditation, you're becoming mindfulness, and you're opening up more and more. And this is how the life force energy that you currently have becomes more pure. It becomes more almost like absolute love, but without a left or right or wrong. It's like everything becomes love. And this is how you do it, by deep meditation, by deep clarity, deep understanding. And then you develop this forgiveness for yourself, because you realize then that you weren't wrong or right. And then this develops forgiveness for everything. And then you get to a state where there's no inhibitions, there's no left or right, and you've just got this almost like oneness with all. And this is nirvana, which is heaven. And this is how you do it, by making that decision to listen to your inner guidance, heart-based living. And then that leads the way, and that gives you everything that I've mentioned about in this video. But anyway, I'm just going to leave it there. If you're watching, you're meant to watch it. Everything follows the divine order and divine timing. Thank you for watching.